when there is a hiccup in what was working or when something breaks, real successful, I think the most successful leaders respond in this way, and they teach their leaders to respond in this way of, okay, what do we need to put in place to ensure this hiccup or this break doesn't happen again? And it's almost as if you become grateful for that hiccup or that error because it gives you an opportunity to tighten your system to be even better.
Well, I want to start right in. Let's just start right in. Dana, can you share a defining moment where you realized you had to change the way you were leading or growing your business? And maybe tell a little bit, maybe sort of combine that with just a little bit of background of what how that defining moment came about and that kind of thing. So,
Absolutely. I think the first defining moment for me was when I was in corporate. I spent 25 years in the corporate world, corporate consulting before I launched my own business. But it was right around the time of 9/11, and I was living in Nevada, but I had flown to Manhattan on September 9th. I was there September 9th and September 10th and boarding a plane the morning of the 11th. And so certainly that was a traumatic time for all of us who endured, and were, witnesses to what had happened. And I
mhm.
think that combined with several weeks later, I turned 30. And then it was 2 months after that was actually my first time in the emergency room being sent to a cardiologist for chest pains. And I was very
Oh my
fortunate
goodness.
at 29 that it was not my heart, but it was stress and
Mhm.
anxiety. And
Yes.
because in my 20s, I had just been completely focused and was very successful at climbing the corporate ladder, being that strong,
Mhm,
independent female executive, the husband, the kids,
mhm,
that was gonna happen later. I was focused on climbing the ladder, and what I didn't realize during that time was that I forgot to take care of me. And in essence, when those 3 things then happened, it was the realization of, "Oh, I actually do wanna have a life outside of the office as well, but right now, I don't even know who Dana is outside of the office."
mhm.
And that put me on a path to seeking personal growth and development and really trying to figure out who is Dana behind, or the real Dana outside of the office, not behind the desk. And really seeking to learn more about leadership, not just leadership of team, but leadership of self, and really building and creating a life that I loved, not just a career that I loved. And so I think that was really a defining season for me. And then what transpired later is I was 2 months from turning 40 when I had my son. And while I loved my corporate career as a consultant, it had me in the airports 3, 4 times a month going to visit clients, and I really knew now that I'm a mom, that wasn't the life I wanted anymore. And so I think it was also giving myself permission to actually change my desires, and do something about it. And that is really when my business was launched. And so I took the skills, the leadership, the project management, the strategic planning, I took that with me into my business, ensuring first and foremost that I actually was really clear on the life that I wanted so that then I
Yes.
could build a business that supported that life, which I just
Mm.
had not been very good at when I was in corporate consulting.
Tell me, let me ask you this. It's just a follow-up question to what you just said. Why do you think so many of us stay so long in a
100%.
place where we know that possibly that's not our calling, our assignment? I
Mhm.
mean, I'm sort of using some different words
Yep.
here,
Yep.
where we know that's just not where we belong. It's not giving us the fulfillment of even how we are made, if I can just say it that
Yep.
way. It doesn't transpire or transfer to the gifts that are within us. Why do we stay in a position so long? So many of us have done that. I can relate to that story as well.
I think it becomes comfortable. Even if we are not completely happy and fulfilled, it's the comfort, it's the right or wrongly thought of security of a paycheck every other week, and it's the known. And so I think that becomes, the safety net. And there's so many unknowns in the world outside of that. And I think
Mhm,
also when we're in that place, perhaps we're being hit with a scarcity mindset of being afraid to
mhm,
push the boundaries, afraid to express what we would really like in that role, in that position, in that organization. And therefore, we don't even have the conversations to see how we might expand and evolve in an organization. We just somehow feel like, nope, this is where we're going to be stuck. And I think also, I can speak from personal experience. Sometimes I was very blessed with some very good leaders, very good mentors in my career. And I also experienced watching some who lived and breathed the office. And when those individuals are in positions above you, you start looking at that thinking, that's not what I want. So if I'm going to grow, if I'm going to evolve in my career, I'm not sure I want to do it at this organization because I don't want to give up my life for this company, for this role. So again, I think it comes down to comfort. It comes down to perhaps a lack of alignment, yet not being sure. And even I will say, when I first started my business, I went into life coaching. I thought I first 6 months I was going to work with busy career women, helping them find balance in their life because that's what I was in the throes of with a toddler. And I quickly learned that no, I'd be running from where my skill sets are. And so I think it's also giving yourself permission to be on a journey of evolution. And just because it was something that fulfilled you in your 20s, it may not be the same area that fulfills you in your 30s or the same skill set. And then 40s and now 50s. I can say, it definitely evolves. And I've been fortunate. I think I've become more aware of who I am, the older or the more mature I've gotten, the more life experience I've had, and really giving yourself permission to evolve. Where sometimes in the corporate world, evolution is not necessarily promoted.
mhm, mhm. That's a very good point, you know, and it leads me to my next question. What have you found in your experience, what kind of leadership allows the fullness of life
Mhm.
for their leaders, for their employees? What I mean by the fullness of life, that they respect the fact that that a whole life of an employee, you'll get more efficiency, more productivity out of that person than someone who lives and breathes the corporate office and expects you to do the same. And I'm sort of putting words in your mouth, maybe, but I just want to understand what kind of leaders are you finding that create the healthiest organization
It is
for those who yes.
It is everything you just outlined. It is the
Mhm,
individual who they themselves want to have a strong, healthy, well-rounded life. And it's quite honestly, I am even I think one of the unique business growth strategist, business coach, consultant who, when we're setting goals, I actually encourage them to set goals in 5 different areas, 5 pillars of life, because I want to be working with the holistic CEO. And when I say holistic, it's the WHOL, holistic, not,
mhm,
uh, from just the health perspective. So those pillars are their health, and it's their physical, it's their mental, it's their emotional, it's their spiritual health. It's relationship health because so often the relationships that mean the most to us are the ones that sacrifice the most when we're driven individuals if we are not careful, if we do not create healthy boundaries for ourselves. And then we go on to financial, business, and leadership goals. But I really think because there is more and more scientific proof and studies that have been done that when you are a happy individual, when you are a fulfilled individual, you show up differently. And that means you're showing up differently as a CEO, as a leader of the organization. You're communicating differently with your team. You really fully embrace the mentorship role of a CEO, not just the dictatorship, which oftentimes happens when we're busy, when leaders are stuck in the grind and hustle mode. They are so focused on the doing, they forget to pause and really think about who are they being. And when you can tap into those other areas and ensure that your relationships are healthy, that your physical and mental health is being taken care of well, your financial health, when all of that is in place, you show up differently. You are being different, which means you lead different.
So good, so good, and spoken so well. Um, One reason I, again, called this the Uncompromised Podcast is because I truly wanted to highlight guests like yourself, as well as other guests I've had, that truly they haven't lived life perfectly, but they've
Mhm.
tried to live a life that's uncompromised,
Yeah.
right? And I think what you just described is when you have a holistic leader, WHOL leader, then what they're doing is they're living a life that's uncompromised. I mean, this is, again, my opinion,
Uh,
right?
mhm.
Because they're not forgetting about the other pillars that you make them address in their life.
Absolutely.
What other, what goals do you have for your family,
Yeah.
for your own health,
Mhm.
for, even so much as the why of what you do? Do you really understand that instead of doing, I love when you said this, instead of doing, you also understand your being,
Yeah.
which is also understanding your why every day.
Mhm.
That
Absolutely.
that is, completely speaks to me.
Mhm.
What does success feel like now compared to when you first started Dana Earhart
Mm.
Consulting? How fulfilled are you, Dana?
I am incredibly fulfilled, and knowing that my son was a toddler when I launched the business. He's now 13, going on 14. We're in the teenage years, and which is a whole new world, as any parent knows. Every
Yes, it
stage
is.
is a new world.
Oh, every stage is a new world, and you just go in and out of those worlds as they go in them, right?
Absolutely,
And out of
and
them, yep.
I think when I first launched the business, I was after what most owners are in the entrepreneurial world. It's more freedom, time freedom, financial freedom. For me, I knew it was very much, I guess what I didn't realize at the time, I thought I was going after both time freedom and financial freedom. What I have realized in my own evolution this past year, really kind of taking stock as he became a teenager and didn't need me in the same capacity that he did in the earlier years, is that I really honed in on the time flexibility the first 10 to 12 years. And not to say that the finances weren't there, it's just it wasn't necessarily at the freedom level that I was expecting. Now I get to say, okay, he doesn't need me as much as often as he did in the beginning. And now I'm going after the financial freedom along with the time freedom. And this past year, I was able to take stock and just be so proud. And I think when you are a leader who can focus on who you're being and you take time to reflect at the progress you've made, at where you're still wanting to make progress. For me, this past year, it was the awareness of I don't regret anything from the last 10 years as far as I was there when I wanted to be for him. Even through COVID, even through things we never thought we were going to experience,
Mhm.
to have the memories and have really been there for all the sporting activities, the school activities, the friend activities. I am really proud of how I showed up as a mom, and that also
Uh-huh.
means he sees me work. Through the pandemic, he saw me work. He could even hear some of the conversations we're having. He's seen me on podcasts. He also knows what it's like to lead in business as well. And as parents, I think
Mhm.
that's the best we can ask of ourselves is to be diligent at walking our talk and being a true role model for our children, just as we are for our clients as well.
So well said, so well said. You know, let me ask you this follow-up question. What kind of productivity happens
Mm.
when a leader is able to address all the things that you just talked about? What and maybe they don't even know what changes within themselves as a leader. So 2 things. Discuss what you've seen with your clients.
Mhm.
I think you've discussed, of course, you've told your own,
Yep.
testimony here, okay? But if someone's listening, if an executive is listening and they're struggling in addressing that pillar, like you said, I did not miss the important, you know, aspects of my son's life. Like, I've been able to hit those milestones with him and not miss those things. What effect do you think happens with an executive, a leader, a mid-managed leader, a
Yep.
C-suite executive? What happens at all those different levels when they meet the milestones of their family, when they truly make it a priority and fulfill that part of being that holistic leader?
So good. They absolutely show up different when they are at the office. I think they're more purposeful, they're more intentional. They understand and appreciate that it's not about how busy they are being, it is about how productive they are being. It's about ensuring that every meeting they're attending, before they show up, that they understand what is the desired outcome of my investment of time in this meeting, of the investment of my team's time in this meeting. What do we want to get out of this? And ensuring that the desired outcome is actually what is leading them through their day, through their meetings, through their activities, through their conversations. And when you show up as a happy, fulfilled leader, you're also very in touch, I believe, with who you are being in the process. So the human component of leadership is instilled in you. You embody it, which means you're truly having genuine, authentic, purposeful conversations throughout your day with your team. And hopefully, the goal also is, again, for those of us, our parents, or can relate to parenthood, the goal with parenting is to raise an individual to be a successful, independent, um, generous, giving human adult. And when you can bring that thought process to your team, and really embracing mentorship of your team, not dictatorship, not, I see a lot of times leaders fall into delegation is more of task dumping as opposed to mentoring individuals to rise up and take on new responsibilities and take the ball over the next finish line or the next chapter of a race. And so again, before I go down too much of a rabbit hole there, I just realized I was.
No, 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 this is great. Go keep on going, keep on going. This is great.
I just really think it does fundamentally change how you are showing up at the office because you also realize you don't want to be there to waste time. You don't allow as many tolerations in your life because you become so much more purposeful and intentional in your work. If you're there for 4 hours, you're going to maximize the 4 hours. If you're there for a full 8 hour day, if you're not traveling, you're going to maximize those hours in the office and with your team. It is a different experience for you as the leader, and it's a different experience for your team as well.
Mm. I absolutely,
Mm.
absolutely. You when you realize that you are balancing, and again, I'm gonna use those different pillars in your life, I just wanna sort of recap that. When you realize that you are balancing all of those different you are addressing it from a holistic standpoint, whether it is your health, whether you know that you have to go to the gym daily, whether you're whatever that is,
Mhm.
right? If you have a family, if you have children, you are that much more productive in the office, and right, I love when you said you humanly more relate to those around you
Yes.
because your conversation isn't so, uh what do I wanna say? So single focused.
Yes.
Your conversation addresses the holistic areas of everyone else's life as well. It just can't help but to go there. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And
I
I think it's a balancing act too, because
Mhm.
oftentimes what I see is you'll have leaders who naturally default to really building relationships. They're phenomenal at relationships. And sometimes maybe they fall a little bit too much into the wanting to be liked arena. And then on the flip side, you have other leaders who are very task focused and they are task managers and delegators, and it's just all task, task, task. And it's
Mhm.
really it's where you find the strongest leaders, no matter any level of leadership, is the individual who can find a way to merge those two, to
Mhm.
be genuine and authentically interested in their team members and have the personal nurturing and cultivation of human to human, while also bringing in the desired for being results oriented. And when a team member feels that their leader genuinely cares for them, they typically want to naturally perform more for that leader as well. So it becomes this wonderful kind of snowball effect and a win-win result for the entire team.
Mm. Very good, very good. Let me ask you, is there a part of, just I wanted you to talk a little bit about this. Oftentimes, I have talked with other guests, that where we've talked about the different types of leadership. Like, so there's servant leaders, there's transformative leaders, but we realize at any point in time, and it's a little bit of what you were just saying, is that we have to change our leadership style to become more balanced in whatever is the need is.
Yes.
So a lot of the leadership positions I've talked about have to do with where the company stages are.
Mhm.
If you need transformative leadership, it's because there's a lot that needs to be transformed
Yep.
within the entity, right?
Yep.
If it's servant leadership, it's because we need to do more at serving from not be so top heavy, but serving from letting the leadership be an inverted triangle, so to
Yep.
speak, right?
Yep.
Making sure that we serve from the bottom
Yes.
on up to the
Yes.
customer, right? Or the shareholder. So, in talking about that, how would you say some of that, understanding the kind of leader that you need to be, and and changing your leadership style as needed within a company has to do also with you saying, there's times when you do need to be a taskmaster, but right, master. But there's also times that you need to be human and relate and be personable and be well liked. How does all that relate together? What have you found? Can you share any kind of experiences that you've had with certain leaders and coaching them through that?
Absolutely. And I think it also depends on what size team you're responsible for, and,
Mhm.
how many layers of leadership, are you leading through? Because each each stage of business, each growth stage, and I think even more importantly, each individual benefits from different types of leadership at different stages, not just stages of the business, but sometimes it's also the stages of of life that an individual may be going through. And I know in the corporate world, oftentimes I was groomed in a way where I was told your personal life stays at the door and you don't bring it into the office. And while, yes, for the most part, we want to be focused on work, the truth is we're humans. And when big things are happening in our personal life, it's going to creep into the business. And when big things are happening in business, it does creep into our personal life as well. So I don't know that there is a black and white answer for this. And I think the true leader, what will benefit them the most is to actually make sure that they're taking time to pause on a consistent basis. Maybe it's daily, maybe it's weekly, to and I will say I don't think monthly is enough. So I think it needs to be daily, weekly, or at a minimum every other week, where they're really taking stock at, all right, what needles are we focused on moving forward this week, this month? What is required of me today? What is required of my team today? And how can I best lead the team, lead this
Mhm.
movement? And you may find yourself having different answers each time you ask that question because of the movement and the progress that's been made or the challenges that the team is facing in moving that needle forward. And it's the adaptability, it's the resiliency. However, without taking time to pause, reflect, and evaluate, that is being lost altogether, and then you're just truly leading from a perspective of tasks in the moment and often losing sight of the end result that is desired.
Mm, so good. So good. There was a lot there in what you said. Um, I think that, there was one thing that you said even before that. When leaders understand who they are, then they're also able to handle those tasks, whether it's, like you said, whether it's an internal kind of change in their leadership, right? Because they
Yep.
have such internal changes, or whether they know they need a change in their leadership in the way that they're approaching their organization, the people, right? The humanistic side of people. So, but there's a lot there. Um, and it even reminds me, it makes me wanna go to this next question as well, but, um, many leaders think that more hustle equals more growth, right? So what's the danger in that belief? If you were speaking to a group of executives, what's the danger in that belief, and how do you help them shift from that mindset to a more holistic, healthier mindset to make sure they are still pushing in a healthier organization in the atmosphere?
Such a good question, and I think leaders at all levels face this. And for so many, I think, decades, the answer has been work more hours, work longer hours, work more to get more done. What hasn't been addressed or wasn't addressed long in the past, it certainly is something in my everyday conversations, is that when you're working longer, when you're working harder, if you do that for too long of a period, exhaustion and fatigue starts coming in. If you are the leader who is making all of the decisions because you have not successfully mentored your team to take on some of those decisions, you are
Yes.
creating exhaustion and fatigue, which leads to burnout, which leads to less productivity, less patience, less,
Yes.
productive conversations, less productive meetings. It
Mhm.
actually takes you over time the exact opposite direction of what you were attempting to create or accomplish, or at least the costs of creating and accomplishing that are far greater than what you initially anticipated. And where leaders can really change that is, again, bringing two key words: it's purposeful and being intentional. And I
Mhm.
think many leaders, one thing I've been talking about a lot more lately is the decision matrix of, does your team really know who is responsible or who is able to be making decisions for various points of the workflow? And if, as the leader, if you are the only decision maker, understand you're the bottleneck and that you will be
Yes.
exhausting yourself. And so you really want to be mentoring your team at the various layers and levels to be able to answer questions, make decisions, and keep you apprised. I think that's the thing that sometimes gets lost is there certainly is an accountability and a reporting structure that needs to be in place to ensure the leaders are being informed along the way, but you absolutely want to be delegating some of those decisions.
Absolutely. And what you're talking about is empowering your people,
Yes.
right? Empowering the people that are the closest to the customer or closest to the client or closest to whatever it is, right?
Yes.
But, and, because when people so what have you found when a leader empowers their people,
Mhm.
what have you found? I mean, I think you just described it, but again, I just wanna maybe dig a little more deeper
Yep.
in that, right? When you empower your people to make decisions and there's lots of things that can fall from that, innovation and creativity and um, solutions
Mhm.
that many could not have come up with. Just let me know what has been your experience in that when you coach a leader to truly not be the bottleneck
Yes.
and have everything on their desk.
Yes, sometimes it's really uncomfortable for some leaders, because
Mhm,
they are feeling as though this is their baby, this is their responsibility, and while
mhm,
it is their responsibility, it does not preclude them from being able to mentor others to be able to take the ball and run with it. And it really is, as you said, it's about the empowerment, it's about the mentorship, and then it's about putting something in place so that you can be tracking results, that you can be reporting on the progress,
mhm,
that
mhm,
the leader can still keep their finger on the pulse, because that's also going to be what increases their comfortability and their confidence that the team is doing what they have been empowered to do. So
mhm.
often, I have the conversation with leaders that you've brought them on board, you've trained them, you're continuing to nurture them. Now it's
Mhm.
time to trust yourself that you have gotten them to the point of being able to take this ball and run with it. And it's so interesting that when I word it that way, they kind of stop and they're like, "Oh." It's trusting myself that I have
Yeah.
passed the baton, they
Yes.
are ready to
Yes.
take it and run with it. Just and
Mhm.
again, I'm gonna relate it to parenting because we go through that at all the various stages of raising our families, and our grandchildren, that oftentimes is the same level of leadership. It's trusting yourself that you have done your job to
Mm.
embrace them and to fuel them with the tools they need to be successful in their role. And now you need to surrender and detach while allowing them and empowering them to take the ball and run with
You are coaching me now, Dana.
it.
I have an 18-year-old.
Oh.
He's about to leave home and go to college,
Oh,
and it is trusting that I have given him everything my husband, I've given him everything that he needs to be successful,
yeah.
and that he is ready to go.
Mhm. And it's still
And
hard,
that is
still
and
scary.
it's of course. It's so there are so many parallels I'm finding, of course, between parenting and leading an organization, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't, it is the same things that apply in effective leadership is the same thing that applies with effective parenting, which blows my mind through the years, right?
Yes.
And so, sometimes I have a 22-year-old daughter who just graduated from college, and I'm like, "She's just so independent. She's just not but that was what I wanted, right?
Yes. Yep.
I raised that, right? There's other things where I'm thinking I should have raised this better, uh, definitely there's so much parallel between the 2, isn't it?
There is a lot. Absolutely.
Gosh,
Absolutely.
it just blows your mind. It blows your mind. So what's one myth, Dana, about scaling a business
Mm.
that you wish more leaders would unlearn?
Oh,
And what
unlearn. Ooh,
unlearn, and what truth would you replace it with? So you can just talk about the
yeah.
truth if that's
I
what's the truth about scaling a business?
The truth about scaling a business is that you don't need to continually recreate the wheel.
Oh, so good.
And that scaling is really about embracing what has worked and
Yes.
simply having the systems to be able to rinse and repeat that maybe at a greater speed when you're scaling. But it's really about trusting the talent, trusting the systems, and keeping your finger on the pulse. So I think that's the key too, is that you can't just hit the power button and then walk away from it. You still want to have those checkpoints along the way to ensure that it's still working properly. But you do not need to every 3 months be trying a new system or recreating the system. It's about
Mhm.
trusting what has worked and keep moving forward with that.
Without naming companies, which I don't want you to do, but who like, what environments have you found are doing the best? Like, what services or product, or what could you share as far as a case study without naming a particular company that you find does that well?
That is a great question, and I'm not sure that I'm going to have a specific answer for it. I do think, some of the service-based businesses, and one example I will be thinking of is legal practice. I think legal
Mhm.
practices, once they have very well fine-tuned systems, because typically
Mhm.
they're in various areas of law, their engine works. Their engine is in place, and it's really up to the people to ensure that that engine, those systems are working.
Mhm.
I think that is one area that works very well because while they're working with people and personalities, they're not customizing their deliverability to the client.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think when
Mhm.
you move into some consulting agencies, or agencies in general, when
Mhm.
they are doing work for a client and
Mhm.
weighing the pros and cons of personality and specific requests, it can be very easy to all of a sudden have nothing that is systematized because you're recreating the service deliverability for each and every client based on what that
Mm.
client wants. And that makes it a little bit more difficult to scale unless you start tightening in your process. And not that you want to create a cookie cutter operation when you're in consulting. There's certainly some aspects of what you're
Mhm.
delivering that can be systematized.
Mm. That's good. That's good. That's good. I think of, when you said, um when I was thinking about scaling a business and going back to that
Mhm.
question even, and what truth you would place with it, and you said not always reinventing the
Yes.
wheel, it reminded me a little bit of some product consumer good companies
Mm.
that I'm very aware of, right? And I found some of the greatest brands and some of the greatest ways of which we had served large clients is because we truly got a system in place that worked, and we didn't retweak it every 3 months, but we just maybe added something to it, or we did a minor change, or, constantly there was an evaluation. Because when you do an evaluation of something that's working, even though it's not perfect, you're able to make tweaks along the way, right?
Yes. Yes.
Versus just revamping and recreating for the sake of recreating. There is a foundation you can always start from, and I
Absolutely.
think and that's what experienced leaders do.
Yes.
They always start from a foundation, a strong foundation of what has worked, and then they will build on something customized of what they need, right? So
Yes, and I also a conversation I've had a couple of times lately is when there is a hiccup in what was working or when something breaks, and something slips through the cracks, something is done, real successful, I think the most successful leaders um respond in this way, and they teach their leaders to respond in this way of, okay, what do we need to put in place to ensure this hiccup or this break doesn't happen again? And it's almost as if you become grateful for that hiccup or that error, because it gives you an opportunity to tighten your system to be even better. And that was a
Mhm,
lesson I learned from a great mentor. We had something slip through the cracks who was on my team. I took responsibility, went to talk to her, and I just remember the experience because our first question is, "Okay, well, great. How do we fix this? How do we change this
mhm,
so that you don't ever have to come in my office again and share
mhm,
with me that this happened?" And I just really loved that approach. I actually got to watch her as she called the client. She took ownership. It was true leadership. She took ownership for what had happened and said, "We want to
mhm.
thank you. I know it wasn't a pleasant experience for you, but we thank you because this opportunity has given us an opportunity to tighten our ship even stronger to ensure that this will never happen to you or anyone else in the future." And, when a client is thanked for bringing an error to your attention, it
Yes.
changes the energy and the success of that conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely, which takes me into environments that are open for constructive feedback, um, because you'll find those are healthier organizations as well,
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
That are able to take it and do something with it,
Mhm.
right? And also there's no offense to it,
Yeah.
right? And that's another thing with a seasoned leader, whether it's a C-suite executive on down, when they're able to take good constructive feedback
Mhm.
and truly do something with it or choose not to do something with it.
Yep.
But they're open to hearing, they're open to listening, they're open to trying to connect with it, and that's part of that whole servant leadership model, but also that's part of the transformative leadership model as well. Um, there's something to that as well. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but I'm assuming you've run into that as well, so.
Very much so. And just in my relationship with clients as well, I'm typically working with the CEOs and sometimes their leadership team. They
Right.
themselves, they're coming to me and they want feedback. And one of my questions that I put in writing is, if I see something, can I address it? Do you want me to address it? Every one of them is
Right.
100% absolutely. That's why they're here. And my goal and objective is to be able to deliver that feedback in a way that they hear it, they feel it, and they understand the value of it. Because I want them to take that experience with me, potentially giving them constructive feedback so that they
Right.
also can learn how to be giving their team constructive feedback as well. And to understand that it can actually be a really pleasant experience, even if you're hearing something you don't want to hear. The
Yes.
truth is, if
Yes.
you are an individual that wants to grow and evolve, feedback is what can help you get there faster.
Absolutely, absolutely. Here's another great this is another question I wanted to sort of dive in with you as well. What are some of the common failed solutions
Mm.
you see leaders default to when trying to fix growth problems?
Well, we've
I was
definitely
Yes,
I was gonna say we definitely touched on one of them already, which is you think you need to work more hours, you need to work harder, you need your team to
yes,
work harder, and we know that that just leads to exhaustion, frustration, overwhelmed, and oftentimes resentment. That word did not come up, but the last thing you want is to feel resentful. The last thing you want your team to feel is resentment. So
yes.
that certainly is not an area to go. I think another failed solution is really uh, tasking more, delegating more, and so you in essence become a task dumper instead of a delegating leader.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so that you want to make sure that anytime you're giving a new project, actually, what one thing that I share with every single leader I work with is leave every meeting with your team, and whether it's one on one, whether it's as a group, asking, "What do you need from me to be more successful in your role or more successful with this project?" And that goes to the servant leadership that you spoke about earlier, because I am a firm believer
Yes.
that that is not only serving them, it's empowering them. It's empowering
Yes.
them to speak up and say, "I need this resource. I need more time with you," whatever it might be. It's their opportunity to speak up and say, "This is what I need to be more successful," and it creates the true partnership, the true team environment that you want.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
Other failed solutions,
I would think one that comes to mind too, I like what you just said because the whole empowerment, not creating more tasks, but also just looking at the organizational structure as a whole. Sometimes maybe you're too top heavy, you're too, um, not everyone's role is defined. So I'm looking at maybe from an HR perspective as well. Would you say that is a failed solution to a growth problem in
yes.
fixing a growth problem?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, I have several new clients that, they're high 7 to 8 figure companies, and there's no job descriptions. So, yeah, so, it's one of the first things we're working on, job description, scope of work. Then we can move into the actual SOPs and making sure that things are documented so that you are
Right.
setting your team up to succeed more efficiently, effectively, and productively.
For someone listening today, Dana, who knows they're stuck, but can't quite name the bottleneck,
Mhm.
what's the first step you'd recommend?
Great question. I think the first area or the first thing to think about is compartmentalize it into various departments. Is it leadership? Is it marketing and lead generation? Is it sales? Is it customer service? Is it, where are you feeling the stickiness? Which is
Mhm.
that bottleneck? Is it in your own schedule? Do you feel like you just don't have time to breathe? And this actually ties into what I was going to say. Is your
Oh, good.
calendar so packed that your calendar is leading you as opposed to you leading your calendar? And that's what, one thing I absolutely emphasize with clients is we're at the third of the month right now, but by the 15th of the month, you want to not only have the rest of this month mapped out, you want to start blocking off the next month. And by blocking off, I'm talking about making sure you're clustering and working in time blocks, because we know scientifically that every time you are interrupted, it takes your brain 20 to 23 minutes to get back refocused on a singular focus, which means the majority of our teams are probably never 100% focused on the project at hand because there are so many interruptions. But if you can cluster your schedule so that you are using similar parts of your brain in clusters, you will automatically be more effective and more productive. As you are mapping out the meetings that you're going to attend, be really crystal clear on what is the desired outcome of each of those meetings. And if you don't know what the desired outcome of a meeting is, why are you having that meeting? And then start evaluating, is that a meeting that you need to be attending, or is this a time you pass the baton to your leader, your one of your leaders, who goes on your behalf and simply reports back to you so that you can free up more time for your day. But it really starts with you leading your day to ensure that it is giving you the space for those goals and the pillars that I referenced earlier. So I'm always encouraging, first and foremost, put your personal appointments on the calendar, the date nights, the time with kids, the taking care of your health, your spiritual, emotional, physical health, put those on the calendar first so that you're building a business and a career that supports the life you want. And then I can do a whole session on how to approach your calendar, but it really absolutely starts with leading your calendar and not allowing your calendar to lead you.
I am going to end with that. That was very powerful, extremely powerful. It just, um, for so many reasons, when I think about our lifestyle, when I think about my lifestyle, right, and sort of the prioritization that I put to my lifestyle, one being my faith first, right, because I feel like the top priorities, if none of those go correctly, then I cannot be productive and do
Yeah.
what I need to do within my career.
Yep.
And, so, I really, really enjoyed this time with you, and I actually could keep going.
I
But, you are an effective executive coach that is needed in such a time as this. You really are,
Thank you.
especially with where we are, and especially when I think of the new generation that's coming up. When I think of, I have a 22-year-old daughter who's entering the workforce, right?
Mhm.
It's those things that we do need to teach them because, we need to make sure that the pillars, I love when you said the all the different pillars that we need to address within our life are fulfilled,
Yeah.
and they're whole, and they're not broken
Yeah.
and complete so that we can do, and be productive and efficient in what we do, on a daily basis within our careers. So, thank you so much. Great conversation.
Thank you very much. This was a good conversation, and I feel the same. I could continue the conversation. Uh,
I could too very easily. We might have to do a part 2.
there you
There's
go.
some guests where I'm doing part 2 with, so definitely you're on that list,
Well, thank you.
so we can keep going. Yep, this is the whole reason why I'm doing this on top of everything else, right? It's these kind of conversations, so thank you.
It's valuable. Thank you for bringing it to the world.
Absolutely.